Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Muffed Punt podcast. My name is Brandon, and I am joined by Ralph. How we doing tonight, Ralph?
Doing good, Brandon. Thanks for having me.
Always happy to have you. Week 5 of the XFL season kicked off on Saturday, a day that saw the Houston Roughnecks improve to a 5-0 record with a 32-23 win over the now 1-4 Seattle Dragons, before the 3-2 New York Guardians easily dispatched the 2-3 Dallas Renegades with a 30-12 win in the late game. The first game of the day started unexpectedly with the Dragons taking a double-digit lead in the early going as the Roughnecks quarterback P.J. Walker looked uncharacteristically shaky, turning the ball over 3 times with 2 of those turnovers leading to Dragons touchdowns. And that's funny because, you and I were talking about P.J. Walker and if he could really continue this torrid pace that he's been on through the first several weeks here in the XFL, even though we were kind of wondering how much those defenses could really stand up and how good they could really be with being XFL defenses. I mean, we got to see PJ struggle, and then by the end of the game, they were able to pull it out, and I was definitely very impressed. What did you think?
It's funny to see, him finally struggle for once, and having him, come out the way he did and throw a couple interceptions, right, and then come back and turn it around. It shows, gives him a little struggle and gets the team a little struggle, and we'll see how that unfolds the rest of the season for him.
Yeah, Walker wound up throwing for 351 yards and 3 touchdowns, but he nearly provided the Dragons with a chance to tie the game in the final seconds when he appeared to take a knee on 4th down with 3 seconds remaining. But the XFL officials bungled the situation by letting the time tick off the clock, and the game ended without a review. That was one of the things that I thought was super interesting about this game, not only seeing P.J. Walker deal with some adversity and be able to overcome it and be able to really allow that offense to do what it does, but then to see the end of the game, you give the other team, they had 3 seconds left essentially to run a play, and the officials essentially walked off the field and let them tick off. Now that we have this behind the scenes look, if you will, at hearing what the officials have to say, they literally were able to interview like the head of officiating on TV right after the game, like, why did this happen? And he's like, yeah, this shouldn't happen, we got to do better, yada yada yada. And it's like, man, I can't imagine, we've never had where like you could literally have the interviewers kind of grill the referees right on camera for everybody to see. I kind of liked it.
You see a player get interviewed after a game or a bad game, and you see how they react and whatnot, and it's nice to see somebody like a referee being interviewed and say, hey, you messed up. Own up to it.
At first I was wondering how detrimental it was going to be. Like, man, is everybody going to really hyper focus on this because you essentially get to watch the whole ship go down, if you will? It really, to me, seemed like almost cathartic because, like, immediately on the spot, you got to see why it happened. And then we were able to be like, this sucks, but we're moving on.
Right.
It also helped that it was the first game of the weekend, so it was that we were kind of able to have a lot more football after that to allow for that memory to go. It wasn't the last game of the weekend.
So it didn't marinate for the rest of the week. Yeah. And I saw during the late night game Sunday night, the Vipers and the Wildcats, where they actually gave you the statement from the XFL and from the referees where they said, yeah, we messed up, and the guy that was in charge has been reassigned. Immediate reaction from that. It's pretty impressive.
They asked the guy, hey, why can't everybody still here? We're all still dressed. Why can't we just do the last 3 seconds? And the guy was like, can't bring everybody back. They're literally still in the building. And he's like, nope, sorry, can't bring everybody back. So it seemed like the crappiest answer that you could give in that particular moment of like, nope, just can't do it. Because like essentially it's like, I don't know if it was a corporate speak to say like, once we declare the game over, it's over. You can't reopen the game, essentially. So we said it's done. We walked off the field. No matter how wrong we were in that assessment, it doesn't matter. We said it's done, so it's done now.
So now you got to go back and basically apologize for your mistake and, make a statement, come out and say, oh, yeah, we messed up, and then hope that it just goes away. But, 3 seconds, yeah, they could have run another play. What were they down by? 3 points?
6. So
points.
They totally could have come back and won.
Of course. Yeah, that's funny. I mean, they were there. They should have come back out.
I like how the transparency of the league really gives you that ability to see a lot more behind the scenes. The only part of it that I really don't enjoy, and you and I have kind of gone back and forth about this a little bit, is you hearing the coaches call the plays. I really don't like that.
And I like it.
I don't like it because to me, you're just asking for some Bill Belichick guy to essentially have somebody sit there and watch the broadcast. So then you hear all of the play calls and then essentially know what you're going to do on offense. Like, this is the only thing that I think we saw this a little bit last week with the Wildcats game, guys calling feints on the actual line of scrimmage. You saw Josh Johnson give fake hand signals to his wide receiver. The defenses change, and then he ends up having a run play off to the right side versus the wide receiver on the left that he threw the hand signal to. When you're having those fake audibles on the line of scrimmage and different things that you can do, I feel like you can overcome the fact that you're literally just handing out your play to the other team before you start. I love all the rest of it. That's the only part that I would take out. And I hate when they have the two coaches there on at the same time and you hear both of them calling their plays at the exact same moment.
That can be a little distracting.
Oh, dude, pick one. It's like having two songs on at the same time when you go out somewhere and you're like, oh, this is driving me insane.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I like it because it gives you a little, like a Hard Knocks view of the team and of the league itself. I see what you're saying about it being a little too much, but the point I'll make about the, somebody like a Bill Belichick kind of guy come in and learn the plays or steal the plays or something like that. If there was a Bill Belichick kind of guy, they're probably not in this league. So in my opinion of it, and from a very loose perspective as a fan, seeing it on TV and seeing the behind the scenes stuff, the interviews in the locker room, the interviews coming off the field, the interviews after touchdowns, I find them to be entertaining. I would expect this league to have and want that to be their point of focus, is because their whole claim to fame is the NFL's not entertaining and the NFL's not doing the things that we're doing to make the game of football fun again, right? So having them do the coaches, I agree with you on the double thing. When there's the offense versus defense, that's way too much. You can't even pick out words because all these plays are basically gibberish anyway. So having them both on at the same time can be a little too much to take in at once.
There's a couple little things that I'm sure that they could tweak in the long run that will make it better for sure. But it's funny how they were able to interview guys and they're still out of breath on the sidelines. And I know they're having a little bit of problem with guys using foul language. And they're like, hey, guys, could you not curse before they interview like every person on the sidelines, which is pretty hilarious. But it's awesome to have that access. I mean, we get that to some extent, but it's nice to have a little more access and all of those things with the immediacy of it. I hope they can do little tweaks. Like, for instance, you mentioned the locker room stuff. It's cool to have that access and be back there and hear them hyping up the team and all that stuff. But there's equally so many times that they're like, all right, guys, we're going to listen into the locker room. And then they cut to it and nothing's happening.
Right.
Why not do this? Send somebody in there, record it, and then play it back by cutting out the parts that are boring. How hard is it? You got a truck, you guys do instant replays, and they started doing that for the beginning of the game. So now if you notice when the games come on, they'll do real quick cuts of each coach hyping up their team instead of them sitting in the locker room the whole time. Like, all right, now we're going to go and listen to this, where it's already done. It's already cut. It's already ready to go. They just throw it up, and then you're just watching that clip. It makes it so much more succinct, and it helps you build up that energy kind of going into the game instead of having this dead space of awkwardness that everybody can feel.
And plus it stops you from, there's going to be one random guy that just thinks it's going to be funny to walk across the screen with no towel on, with no clothes on. Something's going to happen. There's going to be somebody that's going to think it's funny and do it or try to do it. So you're right. It would give them a chance to cut that, edit it, make it, safe for TV, so to say.
And they had that with the lady that was interviewing the guy on the sidelines right after he got the recovery for the touchdown from the fumble that they got off the quarterback. they were like, all right, guys, don't curse. How'd that go? And he immediately just curse bombed like crazy. And you saw her turn to the camera. Her eyes got huge and then just bleep. I was like, okay. It's like, don't touch that button. Oh, we're going to hit that button.
Right. If you tell somebody not to do something, they got to scratch that itch.
So I would say, all in all, it was nice to see another good weekend of XFL football. I think out of the 4 games, there were at least 2 games that were very good as far as the entertainment factor. The Houston Roughnecks again defeated the Seattle Dragons 32-23 rather. The New York Guardians blew out the Dallas Renegades 30-12. It's nice to see them gather some semblance of an offense back together and start to become relevant again in this league. I'm happy about that. And then on Sunday, the DC Defenders defeated the St. Louis Battlehawks 15-6. Pretty surprise game for that one. Cardale Jones came out for the first quarter, stunk it up. They swapped to their backup quarterback, Tyree Jackson, and then he just took over the rest of the game, and the whole team seemed to assemble behind him. And what was really cool was right after he scored his first touchdown, he goes running off the field, and who's the first person there to dap him up but Cardale Jones? I'm like, there you go, man. Way to be a good teammate. You got benched, but you're still going to dap up the guy that just scored. Good job. And then finally, as we mentioned earlier, the Los Angeles Wildcats defeated the Tampa Bay Vipers 41-34. As you had mentioned, the early part of that game was owned by the Vipers, and then the Wildcats offense ended up finding its footing and worked its way through. The defense of that team really came alive late and helped them to overcome that. And I mean, that was going to be a crucial game. Both those teams were 1-3 heading into that game, allowing the basically whoever's going to win going to 1-4. You're likely not going to do anything with the rest of your season.
Right. And like I told you, I watched a little bit of that game, and for the period of time I did watch it, it seemed to be pretty entertaining, going back and forth. A couple turnovers by the Wildcats, and capitalized quickly on by the Vipers, and again, seeing that halftime interview with the Wildcats coach, he just kind of stood there. He said a couple words, and then it was like, oh, we got to go back on the field now, and then they just
10-minute halftime, man.
Yeah,
10-minute halftime.
Yeah.
You got to get in, get out.
Yeah,
that's the other thing that I think is really cool about the XFL games. If you look how long most of them are run at this point, 2.5 hours.
Is that what they are? 2.5?
Yeah, most of them are 2.5 hours. So you're almost cutting a whole hour off an NFL game. And if you look at the amount of plays run, they're only a couple plays less average per game. I think the NFL averages 126 plays, and the XFL have been averaging 122. So you're within a few plays, and you're cutting almost an hour of time off that game.
Wow, that's interesting. Now, it's a 10-week season, right?
Yep.
So you got 10 weeks. Any buys?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the XFL is a 10-week regular season with each team hosting 5 home games and no bye week. It's followed by a 2-week postseason featuring the top 2 teams in each division competing in a single elimination bracket.
So you got a 10-week season, right? So you're playing, as opposed to the NFL, you're playing 6 less games. How many preseason games there were this year? Probably a couple for each team, I would imagine.
None. They just went right into it.
Right into it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And then, so
they had a couple weeks of practice, like scrimmages and stuff.
I got you.
But they didn't have like an off season per se. They really just had, I think it was a month, really, of December and like the end of December into January they had before everything started.
So if you think about it, then their preseason was weeks 1 through 4. Now you're in the stride of, the last 6 games, basically. You're going to see, I think, if I'm looking at it from, with NFL eyes, these next six weeks are probably going to be some pretty good football. You're going to see it start to even out, I think.
If you have not tuned in to the XFL up to this point, I would highly suggest doing so for the following weeks for that exact reason. I think we're going to get the best football product it's had to offer coming up. You're seeing teams really start to find their stride, find their niche, and what they're going to be good at and what they're going to do to overcome the other team. And I think it's a lot more fun to watch now. In the first couple of weeks, it was like, all right, whoever's going to be the first team to get any kind of semblance of offense in this game is going to be the ones to win. Where now you kind of have a lot more strategy. You see teams that the Battlehawks versus DC Defenders, those teams ran the crap out of the ball that whole time, where they're both normally passing teams. So it's nice to kind of see this kind of different schemes up against different schemes. All right, so moving on to our next topic, we want to know, where is Tom Brady going to sign in 2020? You know, it's really hard to imagine in my lifetime that I really thought that I was going to be able to say those words at some point, that Tom Brady might not be with the New England Patriots any longer. Did you ever think that day was going to come, Ralph, outside of him retiring from football?
I still don't think there's going to be a day without him in football. I mean, the guy's been around for, 20 years almost, and he doesn't want to quit. He doesn't want to stop. So, and hearing him not be a part of the Patriots, no, I don't think I ever did think that would happen.
I think he's probably one of the more polarizing guys in sports, as far as you either love him or you hate him. I don't think there's too many in-betweens on that. And for all the negative things that I've had to say about this guy over the years, you can't not say that he's not a talented quarterback. I mean, the guy is the most winning quarterback that we've had in football to date, and I think it's going to be hard to see anybody come around and match that. So to imagine that talent leaving and going to another team is going to be interesting, but I think the trouble is that, is he going to be able to be the Tom Brady that we know him to be, or was last year the real signifier that Father Time has caught up with Tom Brady?
I think Tom Brady, nobody's going to win against Father Time. So eventually he's going to come. He's going to beat Tom Brady down, and Brady's going to retire and go, off into the sunset with Giselle and his kids and live a great life. But for now, he's what, 43? He'll be 43 when the season starts. I feel like he still wants to play. I don't see him being a great quarterback for the remainder of his career. His legacy, let's face it, is tied to Bill Belichick. As Bill Belichick goes, so does Tom Brady, in my opinion. Now, you can say that Tom Brady didn't do it with great wide receivers or great supporting cast or what have you, but that scheme and that coaching is what allowed Brady to be Tom Brady. So, if he goes somewhere like San Francisco, is he going to be the same? He's going to have a great supporting cast, but it's going to be a different offense. It's going to be completely different than whatever he's done before. So, system versus talent. Here we go again. So, we'll find out what Tom Brady's really all about here.
So, it's always interesting to see what Vegas has to say. So the Westgate Superbook odds have New England, of course, as the top team for Tom to go back to. But also the interesting ones, I think, are the ones that are at the top of the list. So we have Tennessee, Las Vegas, and then San Francisco. Let's talk about that for just 2 seconds. So Tennessee, we saw Tom Brady was hanging out with Mike Vrabel and doing a little FaceTime action with Julian Edelman. And so a lot of people had a lot to say, a lot to read into that particular situation. I thought one of the funnier comments I heard about that was, hey, as a guy, I'm not really FaceTiming other dudes. So it might be a situation to where maybe that's a little more serious than we think, because that's not really something I'm doing on my daily basis.
No, and he's got obviously the connection there. I mean, they won a Super Bowl together, if not more than one. And there's the familiarity there, and basically Tennessee has become a bit of a New England kind of destination for former coaches. Mike Vrabel's there, and leading the charge down there. So it's a very logical place for him to wind up. Could he be good down there? I don't know. I mean, he's got that young guy, that Brown, number 11, Brown. AJ Brown. He showed out a little bit this year, and you've got the workhorse of Derrick Henry. You've got some pieces down there that could be attractive to Tom Brady, and I think Tennessee's got the cap room to bring him in.
They wouldn't have the cap room to bring him in at top dollar and sign Derrick Henry, which I think is going to be a big problem for them. So do you think that Tom would take a cap hit so that he knows that he can put the workhorse behind him of Derrick Henry? Because I would want to do whatever I can to put that guy behind me if I'm Tom Brady. You have not had a running back of that quality ever in New England.
What you're going to find out is how much does New England irk Tom Brady. So if New England, doesn't offer him the money that he wants or the years that he wants, or he feels somewhat spurned by the Patriots, and then you're going to see how much fire he's got left in him, because he's going to go somewhere else, and if he goes to Tennessee and teams up there, you'll see what Tom Brady's all about. I'm really curious to see him in another uniform, because I want to know if it's the Patriot way or if it's Tom Brady. I mean, obviously Tom's got something to do. He's a Hall of Famer, first ballot, no doubter. But we're gonna see how good he really is in some respects.
What do you think of Gruden and the Raiders with Tom Brady in Vegas?
I just don't see it happening. I don't see it. I don't see I don't see that being a long partnership or marriage, if you will. I don't see it being a great fit for Tom.
Did you see that Dana White from the UFC was on a talk show, or not a talk show? He was kind of doing his own little like podcast sort of deal, and he was talking to Tom Brady, and he was basically pitching Brady to come to Vegas.
No, I didn't see that.
Apparently, Robert Kraft was not super happy about that.
Well, I mean, nobody else can really tamper with him, right? So if you've got Dana White out there tampering, if you will, on behalf of the Las Vegas Raiders, then you're having somebody tamper for you and not getting penalized for it. So it kind of makes sense.
So the two things that I think are the biggest talking points on this is, number one, the amount of buzz that you hear around Tom Brady going to San Francisco and them either walking away from Jimmy Garoppolo or either doing a trade where they trade him to New England for Brady, essentially before Brady's deal goes up. I don't really know how that would work out for them. Now, if you look at the 2019 season comparatively, Jimmy Garoppolo has a better completion percentage. Tom has more yards per game with 253 to 248. Garoppolo has more yards per attempt with 8.4 to 6.6. And Tom has the better touchdown to interception ratio with the 24 to 8 versus 27 to 13. So what do you think? You got the young gun on the rise, or you have the guy who's been there, done that, could possibly do it again? If you are Kyle Shanahan, where are you going to go with this? Are you going to allow Jimmy Garoppolo to walk away, or are you going to have your fate, your legacy perhaps on the shoulders of a guy who closed his eyes and chucked it?
If Shanahan's going to go after Tom Brady, you know what that says to me? That says to me that Shanahan feels he's got a 1 to 2 year window. And after that, it's going to be rebuild, right? So Brady's got 1 or 2 years left in him. Probably, maybe a third if he signs somewhere like, the Chargers bring him in on a 3-year, $70 million guaranteed deal or something, some Kirk Cousins kind of number. But if San Francisco brings him in, it's got to tell me as a fan and me as a player that we've got a very short window.
Well, we'll definitely be keeping our eyes on where things are going to go from there. I think the other one the one I don't really want to talk about, but I think we should throw it out there, is the Dallas Cowboys. With the whole Dak situation being what it is, they have reportedly offered him over $105 million guaranteed, of over $33 million a year, and he has said no. So if that doesn't work out for the Jones family, if you will, are we going to see possibly Tom Brady strap on the old star on his helmet, which I think for you and I would immediately cement him in the I will hate this person forever category?
He's basically there now, but that would just put it over the edge for me.
Could you imagine seeing Tom Brady play for the Dallas Cowboys?
No, and I really don't. I don't want to. I mean, well, maybe I do. Let's think about this. Let's break it down.
Ooh, I like where you're going with this. But you don't even have to say it. I already like. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Let's break it down. Tom Brady's getting older. He's got a couple years left in him. He's going to break down. He's going to get slower. He's going to make worse and worse decisions as a quarterback. The game's going to get faster around him, and he's going to be slowing down. So let's take that into consideration, and let's get rid of Dak, and because Dak's not going to be a backup to Tom Brady. There's no way. So then you get the Cowboys back to the same spot they were at a couple years ago before Dak came in, which is nowhere, and having guys like John Kitna as your quarterback. So
I was going to say, if you're going the Tony Romo angle, I would say Brady's better than Romo.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt.
But that would be interesting because, one of the greatest memories of my sports life is watching the Eagles beat the Patriots in the Super Bowl. So I could only imagine how much joy it would bring me in the long run to see us relegate them to not making the playoffs year over year if Tom Brady has that decline. Now, if it goes the opposite direction, I will certainly not be happy, but it would bring me all types of unlimited joy to see it happen in that particular fashion.
And you know what? I wouldn't mind actually them paying Dak the $105 million. Have him take that money, because it's going to be another bad contract for the Cowboys. It's going to be another Zeke contract. and you love to see it. You love to see them make bad decisions and manage their money poorly, and they're not going to have enough money to build around those two players and build the front lines, and you're going to see that it's not a recipe for success.
I think it's tough to say right now whether the Zeke contract is going to be a bad decision for them. I think it obviously was last year, but we're looking at that in a very, very limited window because he spent the beginning of the offseason in Cabo. He didn't really have his normal offseason going into the year. So, I mean, he didn't really get his feet under him for a couple games. And even at that, he didn't have that burst after he got past the line that he had in years previous. So I don't know if he'll return to form this year or if he's going to continue to fall off. But I don't think it would have been. And if I was, this is hard for me to even do. If I was going to put myself in the head of a Dallas Cowboys fan, I don't know if I would be able to drink enough. No, I'm kidding. I don't know if I would be able to. I think I would be fine with them letting Zeke go at that particular point in time. And then if he had that particular season with another team, kind of like the Lev Bell situation, because, yeah, Lev Bell got paid, but then look at the year he had last year with that abysmal offensive line. You literally saw the guy cry on national television. So it's like, I don't really know if that was a smart contract situation, but I think with this whole thing with Dak, if they end up signing him and keeping that team together, I'm not going to be that upset about it because I feel like that's a beatable team. You've seen these guys not show up on multiple occasions. Dak's got to have Amari. He's got to have Zeke. He's got to have the line. Everything's got to be right. One of my favorite videos of all time is Dak Prescott on he's on like an NFL Network show, and they have it's either David or Derek Carr, one of the Carr brothers there, and they're just throwing at tires precision, and Dak just gets owned by a dude who hadn't been in the league for years, and it's like, bro, what are we doing here? This is the guy that's worth $105 million guaranteed, and he can't hit targets with a football? Give me a break.
He was coming nowhere near those targets. You know what? I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think that was at the like Fan Fest or whatever outside of the Minnesota Vikings Stadium the year the Eagles went to the Super Bowl.
Oh, is that what that's from?
I think so. It was like Fan Fest, like where all the fans are mingling around. Yeah. You got all the networks doing their thing, and everybody's like wants to do like the some sort of like competition or something on live TV, and Dak was just, if I remember right, there was like maybe 3 or 4 or 5 of them set up at longer distances, one longer than the next.
Worse than the one
and
before.
He couldn't hit anything. It was fantastic.
The first one was close. Like the Carr brother got it the first try, took Dak like 2, and then every one they got further along, Dak was just missing every single one of them. And it's like, dude, this is not what an NFL quarterback should be in this league. Now, at least for me, if I'm going to be that guy that has to hand out that untold amounts of money to these guys, I would want to make sure this dude can hit a pin if I can have him do it. You know what I mean? Like anything that I can do to try to make that happen. You see the interview with Carson Wentz that they let out recently where they were going through his interview with him with the Eagles when he was going through his draft process, and they were showing him plays and asking him to break down the plays and like alternate routes that guys could have run on that play or this or that. And all of them were blown away by what the knowledge that he had. And then to see what he can do out on the field. That's why I have so much faith in him that if his body can just hold itself together, that I think he will be a great, great quarterback. And that's why I'm like, yeah, I feel like he's worth what we're paying him right now as long as he can stay healthy, where I feel like with Dak, even with his track record of being far more healthy than Wentz, I don't think he's a better quarterback.
No, and if like getting back to Tom Brady, if the Cowboys sign Tom Brady, which that's probably about as slim a chance as the Las Vegas Raiders signing him, you're going to see, that's going to be the tipping point for Dak, and you're going to see what the Cowboys really think of him as a quarterback and moving forward. Now, they offered him $105 million, but I guess he thinks he's worth more than that. In my opinion, he's not.
Well, keeping in the NFL realm, Marty Mornhinweg is on his way back to the Philadelphia Eagles. ESPN's Tim McManus has reported Mornhinweg will serve as an aide to Doug Peterson. The team officially confirmed the hire and announced his title as Senior Offensive Consultant. Mornhinweg was Peterson's quarterback coach in 1996 when Doug played for the Green Bay Packers, and Mornhinweg and Peterson then overlapped on Andy Reid's staff in Philly from 2009 through 2012, and the two do not lack familiarity. So, what do you think of the hire of Marty Mornhinweg? I think we finally figured out what's going on. We're just not going to have an offensive coordinator this year. It's Dougie P.
Yeah, it's definitely Dougie P, and he's taking the reins, and he's going to be the one calling the plays, but he's going to take the everybody's input from around him like they did in 2017, and I think it's going to be a good thing. There's been some chatter out there about it not being it's not good for cohesion, or what's it really saying about the team, and is Doug's a power trip and he doesn't want to let anybody else call the plays, et cetera, et cetera. So in my opinion, I don't care who's calling the plays as long as we score points. So bringing him in and the talent level that he's dealt with over the last couple of years. I mean, he was the OC down in Baltimore for Jackson. So up until this year, I think the guy Roman from used to be with the 49ers, Greg Roman, he took over. But Marty Mornhinweg, I mean, he's a proven coach. He was with us back in 2004 when the Eagles went to the Super Bowl, and he's only continued to, be involved and gain experience, and you're going to see that shine through. And it's not like he's just dealt with the West Coast offense or, a straight, pocket quarterback. He's dealt with everything, the West Coast, and guys like in the pistol, like with Lamar Jackson. I mean, you're going to get a whole breadth of experience there coming out, and I really think it's going to do well it's going to serve Carson well.
I think it'll be nice for those two to not have that. They don't have to get to know each other at all, and they're going to know kind of what each other want to do with the offense at all times. And I think that'll help to have them, a sounding board, if you will. Like, hey, this is what I want to do. Oh, maybe he would also have the clout to say, Doug, I don't know if I'd run that play. Maybe we should do this instead, or what have you. So I like it. I don't hate it. I would have rather seen Deuce get it, but if Deuce couldn't, wouldn't, shouldn't, what have you, this is a pretty decent backup, I would say.
I agree, and Deuce will get his opportunity coming up in the next year or so. But bringing Marty in, I like it. I think it gives them kind of that same feel that they had in 2017 with Frank Reich and Dougie P having ice cream and talking about plays and drawing plays up on napkins, so to say. So I like it. I think it gives them a little little variety, and I think it's going to do well for them.
I think that one hurts seeing Frank Reich go. To see what he's done with the Indianapolis Colts has been nothing short of spectacular. So clearly that guy helped when it came to our Super Bowl run.
It was a big loss.
Sure. So sticking with the Eagles, Jason Peters is apparently going to test free agency. The Philadelphia Eagles announced on Thursday that they will be parting ways with longtime offensive tackle Jason Peters. Peters, 38, is a fan favorite and the longest tenured member of the Eagles. He was signed by the Buffalo Bills as an undrafted free agent in 2004 and traded to the Eagles in 2009. They immediately signed him to a 6-year contract, and Peters did not disappoint. He became a dominant left tackle, making the Pro Bowl 7 times with the Eagles, 9 times overall, and was twice named a first-team All-Pro. The language the Eagles used in their announcement about Peters is important, however, and he'll be testing free agency, but the Eagles said they plan to stay in communication with him throughout the offseason. They're not closing the door on Peters, and head coach Doug Peterson gave an emphatic heck yeah last week when asked if he was interested in bringing Peters back. So what are your thoughts, Ralph?
I think they're doing him a favor. I mean, let's, kind of peel back the onion, so to say, here and look at it from a realistic point of view. They've got Dillard in the wings. We all know Dillard is the next left tackle. So I think they're doing Jason a favor by saying, go test. Go see what you can find. If you can find a starting job with starting salary for a team that you want to play for. You have the choice to go play for whoever you want, as long as they can afford you and they want to sign you. And go, if you feel like that's your chance to get another Super Bowl, or you just want to be the number one guy, I think they're doing him a favor by doing this. Now, you can also look at it as, they're not doing him a favor, because if they really wanted to do him a favor, they can give him the money and just keep him, right? But what I said a couple weeks ago about the Mookie Betts trade and the Boston Red Sox and letting people go at the right time, that's what the Philadelphia Eagles have never been good at.
Nope.
Never. They hold on to people. The sympathy role comes into effect. I think the only guy that really they didn't do that with, and I guess some people could argue they held on to him too long, was Dawkins. But he still had 2 or 3 productive years after he left here. So
I think you could argue that one. I think for me, where you could say that maybe they're getting better at it is the Chris Long situation, because I don't really know how much he had left in the tank. But since they didn't re-sign him to what he wanted, and then he immediately retired and didn't go to another team, I felt pretty decent about that situation and saying, okay, maybe we made the right decision here. As much as I like him, and I think he's an awesome guy, like a pleasure to watch whenever he does stuff on TV.
Totally.
I think we made the right decision in that particular market. So maybe they're getting better at allowing these things to happen and run it more like a business.
And that's what I'm hoping that this is. Obviously you're not going to let a first ballot Hall of Famer walk for no reason. Obviously there's a financial aspect to it. Does he want a 3-year, $30 million contract, or, what's he looking for here?
2 years at most with him, and with his injury history, I don't even know if another team would want him.
No, and that's the thing too, is, the last couple of years, I'd be watching the game and it's like, oh, that Peters is hurt again. Oh, Peters is limping off the field, or, oh, here comes the cart. It's just seems like a constant struggle to keep him on the field.
I mean, if you go back, obviously guys' bodies over time change, but if you go back to 2009 and you see how he looked then versus last year, it looks like he's out of shape, like really out of shape.
He's gained some weight, hasn't he?
Yeah, comparatively to how he used to look back in 2009, like when he came to the Eagles. Back then, he looked like a freight train, like he was going to run somebody over. Now he looks like he's going to run to the buffet, like totally different situation there. Well, we talked about it. And really quick, the other thing I was going to say, didn't that feel good to say, a couple weeks ago when I said this on the show? We're getting some shows in the tank here. We're getting some momentum. I love it.
It does feel good. It feels good to bring it back and to recall, and make a point, across sports basically. So, we have the same opinion of the Mookie Betts thing, and bringing it back. It feels good. It's nice to talk about sports.
And speaking of which, we're going to bring up a little bit of a topic that we discussed last week. So last week we mentioned that Tony Romo got paid. And this week, we're talking about the prospect of Peyton Manning doing the same thing. So ESPN is ready to make a huge change when it comes to their NFL coverage. Michael McCarthy of the Front Office Sports is reporting that the 4-letter network is set to offer the Pro Football Hall of Famer Peyton Manning a $20 million contract to be a part of Monday Night Football. McCarthy said that Manning met with ESPN executives over the last few days. It wasn't revealed what the conversations were about, but Manning has worked with ESPN before, as he was the host of Peyton's Place, which aired on ESPN+. And this comes on the heels of Manning's reportedly offering a massive deal to join the CBS broadcast team to replace Tony Romo. However, Romo was re-signed by CBS, and he will make we were wrong with 17. It's actually closer to $18 million per season for the next 5 years. Manning was offered $10 to $12 million per year for 5 to 6 years. So you're Manning, and they come to you and go, hey, man, we want you to replace Tony Romo. We're going to give you $10 to $12 million a year. And if you're Peyton, you're going, okay, let me think about it. I'm going to mull this over a little bit. And then CBS goes and signs Romo for a $17 million, $18 million deal with over $500 million or $500,000 in perks. And then so you basically find out that they undercut you. They basically came in to see if you would take less to do the same job. How would you feel if you were Peyton Manning? Of course, I'm going to make you pay 20 after that. I'm going to go get whatever money I can get to make that contract that you just got look like crap.
And never have broadcasted a game before ever, and going to come in and pull rank like that. So, hey, if I'm Peyton, he's definitely got the career. He's got the chops, like we said before. He's not shy in front of a camera, and he can really he knows the sport, so he can talk about it, and he can make himself sound smart.
So the interesting thing about all of this is the contracts for the networks that broadcast NFL games will expire soon. ESPN's contract expires after the 2021 season, while CBS, Fox, and NBC's contracts run through 2022. Monday Night Football's broadcast team is Joe Tessitore and Anthony McFarlane, or Booger, and the duo have been attacked. I love how they put this, attacked on social media, specifically Booger and McFarlane. They haven't been attacked. They're just terrible at their jobs, so people let them know about it, which is basically what I'm assuming that we would get too. So, hey, if you have somebody that's going out there on the field and putting out a subpar product, you're going to hear about it. And if you had me broadcast the Monday Night Football game, I'm pretty sure a lot of people would have something to say about it.
Yeah, about I don't know how many people watch that game every week.
9
10
million at least. So Manning considered to be one of the best quarterbacks in NFL history, along with winning 2 Super Bowls. He also won NFL MVP award 5 times, and he was named to the All-Pro team 10 times. He ended his career with 71,940 passing yards, 539 touchdowns, and has a passer rating of 96.5. Manning is also a member of the 2000s All-Decade team, which I think you could argue with that because there was some things on there that not everybody agreed with that All-Decades team. But hey, it's still, the guy's got accolades out the wazoo either way you look at it. And I think that he would be equally as good as Romo, if maybe not a little bit better, because Tony's great, but he doesn't have the comedic chops of Peyton Manning.
No, and I think you're right. I think Manning could definitely reach a wider audience. Like I said before. I mean, the SNL stuff, the commercials, those are things that a wider audience is going to be paying attention to, and it's not just football. So he can really come in and bring an audience to the NFL. And you're going to see, he's going to be some pretty stark competition for Mr. Romo.
So I think that's going to wrap up our football talk, and we're going to move into the world of Phillies and baseball. So the Phillies starting rotation is still pretty up in the air. Manager Joe Girardi this week joked with pitching coach Brian Price that the Phillies rotation competition was the reason he could not leave camp for a week of vacation. Instead, Girardi is being kept busy in Florida by a battle that still does not have a clear favorite. Ranger Suarez pitched the first 3 innings of a 10-2 win over the Red Sox on Saturday and remained in the mix with Nick Pivetta and Vince Velasquez for the final spot in the rotation. Zach Eflin has not been guaranteed a spot, but he pitched on Saturday morning in a simulated game and appears to be in the number 4 spot for the starters. Girardi said that Ranger is the guy that's going to see both sides of the plate, which he did today. He's going to throw his slider into right-handers and away for left-handers. His changeup's also very good, and he knows how to compete. Pivetta, who pitched on Wednesday against the Yankees, has allowed 7 runs in 7 2/3 innings, and Suarez has allowed 2 earned runs in 8 innings. Velasquez will pitch Sunday against the Blue Jays and has allowed 1 run in 5 innings. None of those pitchers have fallen out of the race. I think that's one of the things where we're looking at a lot of scrutiny over the last several years for the Phillies, because for a while we had the 3 aces, and then after we lose out on the 3 aces, it's like we had 3 aces, but we had nobody to get runs. Now we have the reverse situation where we have no pitching, but we have guys in the field who can actually hit the ball. So how do we finally get all this to coalesce together? Do you think that Joe Girardi is going to be able to find that starting lineup that's going to make it work for the Phils?
I think he's got the opportunity to do that, and he's got the pieces in place to make that happen. I mean, Saturday I watched the game, Boston 10-2 victory, and like we were talking before the show here, 1 through 7 was pretty much their starting lineup. So, and they were seeing the ball really well and hitting the ball hard and putting the bat on the ball pretty well. So, it's exciting to see. But from a pitching perspective, other than 1-2, what do you got behind them? 1-2 is Nola and Wheeler.
Yep.
Arrieta coming off injury again, 3rd year, last year of his contract year. Is he going to show out? Is he going to, is
even
he
if he
hurt
does,
again?
I don't want him here. I want him gone.
Especially at $25 million. You're right. Especially at $25 million a year. So after that, you've got Eflin, Velasquez, Pivetta. Pivetta, could be a solid number 4 starter, solid number 3 starter at best. I don't see him really peaking above that. Eflin, we know what we got with Eflin, and Velasquez. They tried it last year. They tried to make him a reliever, but then injuries forced him back into, the main rotation. So
his consistency is awful.
It's awful. I mean,
awful.
There's times where the guy looks like a Cy Young Award winner, and then other times he can't find the strike zone to save his life.
And I don't know what the problem is with that. I don't know if it's like a mental thing, or if he just randomly gets the yips or what. It's just, it's so weird to watch happen with him. There are days that I just want to throw the TV across the room, and there's other days where he's just lights out. So I don't know how he's going to be able to find that consistency, but that's a guy I would have moved off of a long time ago. I was happy to see Maikel Franco gone. I know that's a controversial thought for some people, but Gene Segura has looked awesome at third base in the couple games I've gotten to watch in spring training. I think he'll do a great job there. And, obviously we didn't have the show at that point, so it's easy to say this now, but man, with that whole situation with Gene Segura, I told people from jump, Jimmy Rollins 2.0. This is exactly going to be the situation that you have with this guy, and he has been 100% that for us. So I'm hoping that we can kind of get out of that. You don't always leg it out to first. There's little nitpicky things about your game that I don't really love, to, man, this guy is just lights out every time we watch him play.
Yeah, and as far as not legging it out every time, is concerned, the naysayers are going to say, "Well, pay me, millions of dollars a year, and I'll run out every play. I don't care." Right? Sure, you will. You know as well as I do. Do you go to work every day and give your 100% all the time, all day long? No,
Nope.
you're gonna take it off once in a while. So that talk is kind of old, and Jimmy Rollins was prime a perfect example of that, let's say.
Where I was going with that is just that a lot of people had said last year if he had ran out to, I think it was to second, then Andrew McCutchen wouldn't have gotten hurt. So then we would have maybe had a better season, because Andrew McCutchen was killing it for us before he got hurt last year. And I'm hoping seeing him come back healthy this year, he can kind of recreate that and not have Father Time come back and beat him this year.
Right. Well, a butterfly flapped his wings in the Amazon, which then caused the airspeed to change just a fraction of a mile per hour, which then pushed Segura into the bag to cause Harper or whoever, or Real Muto, whoever it was, to get hurt. I mean, come on, like that's the level of what if that we're getting to with that. And I heard that story last year, and you can only take that so far.
That's a lot of hypotheticals to have to roll through for sure, but I'm definitely happy that we got him, and I'm happy to see that he's going to do a good job, I feel like, at third base. Franco, to me, was another one of those consistency things. He'd have days where he could just hit that ball so hard you thought it'd leave the park, and then there was other days where he's swinging so hard his helmet's into the first row. And that's the other thing, maybe I'm old-fashioned on this one, but for me, if I was a guy running a team, I would have a problem with any guy having hair so big that you have to wear a helmet that's like 3 times the size of your head. And so every time you put anything into your swing, your helmet falls off. That is the silliest thing in the entire world. I get it. It's fashion or culture or however you want to display it, which is fine. But if you're like the Yankees make everybody shave their beards, which is the stupidest thing in the world, but they do it. And so if that's the case, why can't we have it to where it's like, no, your helmet has to fit your head. Like, if your hair is uncomfortable to you to wear that helmet, then that's up to you.
What was that Star Wars spoof movie?
Oh, Spaceballs?
Spaceballs. It almost looked like the helmet from Spaceballs on his head.
It was him and O'Double. They always had, it's like, I got 4 times the size of my helmet on my head. Every time I swing with any kind of gusto, this thing goes into the first row.
Right.
And then I have to go back to go retrieve my helmet, which again is making the game longer. But yet we'll make it so the guy's got to pitch the 3 pitchers instead of just saying, keep your damn helmet on your head. Sorry, that's my get off my porch rant for this podcast. Well, another mention out of Philly spring training is Jeff Singer, a left-hander called over from the minor league camp for a day, struck out 3 batters he faced in the 4th inning. The 26-year-old was born in Philadelphia and grew up in South Jersey. He worked at a car dealership on Frankfurt Avenue in the Mayfair section of Northeast Philadelphia when the Phillies offered him a contract in 2015. Last season, he pitched 42 games in Double-A Reading with a 2.34 ERA and 10.8 strikeouts per 9 innings. Wow, what an inning, Girardi said. I told him easy, old game, right? He just comes in and strikes out the side. Very good breaking ball and very good fastball. His stuff was impressive. So it's nice with the fact that we basically have very little minor league talent at this point. We ushered off our ace with Sixto, our possible ace with Sixto to the Marlins. So now we have to figure out what kind of talent we have in the minor league system. And now we maybe got a guy to come in and help with the relief of the bullpen, which has been subpar as well in the last couple of years. And not only top it off, the guy's a local, which is awesome.
Yeah, and obviously he's going to know what kind of player he needs to be, and kind of effort he's going to need to give to cater to the fans. I did see him pitch on Saturday. Pitched 3 in a row, struck out the side, and did so on 11 pitches, and there were some pretty nasty pitches in there. So I was pretty impressed by watching him play on Saturday.
Yeah, so hopefully we see bright things in his future coming up for the Philadelphia Phillies. So last topic of the podcast for today, and that's going to be the Flyers, which have won a 9th straight, fortunate to keep pace in the Metropolitan Division thanks to Carter Hart and Claude Giroux. So Claude Giroux pumped both of his fists on multiple occasions, and Carter Hart made the save after save from start to finish. Those two were the reasons behind the Flyers' 3-1 win Saturday night over the Sabres at the Wells Fargo Center. Joel Farabee scored an effort goal to seal the win during the 3rd period after Giroux gave the Flyers another lead prior to the 20-year-old's insurance tally. The victory wasn't aesthetically pleasing, but the Flyers' 41-20-7th record found a way to win their 9th straight game, making the club's longest winning streak since November 27th through December 14th, when it was a 10-game winning streak. Winning streak aside, this was an important one given the Capitals smacked the Penguins 5-2 earlier in the day, which I always love to see, by the way. The Flyers remain a tiebreaker out of first place in the Metropolitan Division behind Washington and ballooned their edge on 3rd place, Pittsburgh, to 5 points. The Sabres have lost 6 straight, while their star center Jack Eichel has gone scoreless during that skid. Everyone will say trap game because the Flyers have showdowns in the Eastern Conference powers, the Bruins and Lightning, next week. And during that winning streak, the Flyers have dominated teams, outscoring the opposition 36-16 coming into Saturday's game, which is great for the Flyers because one of the things we've always struggled with is scoring goals. And they weren't going to sustain that pace to help to finish the line. And however, if the Flyers want to prove that they're on the same level as Boston and Tampa Bay, they'll have to play exceptionally better than they did against Buffalo, which played far too often in the offensive zone for Coach Alain Vigneault's liking. So what do you think, man? Philadelphia Flyers are having a year, and it's nice to finally see them come back and be relevant.
It's fun to watch. They're fun to watch again. Let me start there. They at the beginning of the year, I was not on board. I'll be completely honest. I was a very you got to prove it to me, kind of fan, because I was tired of it. I'm tired of hearing, oh, the defense is coming, these guys are coming. How many national broadcasts did you watch Pierre McGuire drool over these guys that were coming up through the ranks, and then Hextall would never play them. He would never bring them up. And so as a fan, I just got tired of the same monotonous, droning on and on about the people that are coming. Well, where are they? Bring them. Let's get them here. So having them play this year, and there's been probably a good half a dozen guys, if not more, that have had their first game this year and been, very integral to their success this year. It's been fun to watch.
I think it's been interesting over the last several years watching the Flyers' philosophy of hockey kind of change. We went from that scrap 'em, beat 'em up team to oh crap, we skate now. So it's almost an entirely different philosophy of hockey.
It's an entirely different philosophy since Ed Snyder's passing, and ultimately, really, The biggest one is how many Russians did you see on the team prior to, say, 2010 even?
That's true. I didn't even think of that.
And Ed Snyder was a very big. I mean, Ed Snyder was Jewish, and so he had a connection, obviously, to the Holocaust, and Russians were not. He didn't want them, and it was his right.
Plus, you had the Flyers team that beat the Russians Olympic team, and that was a big thing too back in the day. I mean, and there's a great documentary about it, I think, on HBO that you can go watch. But that I would imagine added to that as well.
Sure did, yeah, and the hatred, I guess, for the Russians as a nation and as a systemic, oppressor. So from that perspective, that's changed completely. I mean, you've got Russians in the on the team. I mean, he is Russian, but however, he was pretty much has lived here his entire life, or at least adult life. Is Ivan Provorov, and how big of a acquisition was he? I mean, Hextall picked him and saw that he could be a minutes eater and a Norris Trophy level defenseman. I mean, he's going to be the next guy to win a big major award in Philadelphia as a Philadelphia Flyer. And Carter Hart, that guy, he's got Vezina written all over him.
We definitely come a long way since the days of Braden Coburn on the defense, for sure. But yeah, I mean, speaking of Carter Hart, the 21-year-old goalie has not lost a game since February 15th and made history in the process. Carter Hart improved to 7-0-0, dating back to February 18th, and became the first goaltender in NHL history to record multiple win streaks of 7+ games at the age of 21 or younger. For me, it was a very tumultuous process to go through the whole Sergei Bobrovsky thing, where we bring in this amazing young goaltender. The fans fell in love with him, also partially thanks to the Preston and Steve show with their whole Bob. And that was just, everybody fell for that. Everybody loved it. And then he has one bad playoff series, his first playoff series ever. And then they ship him off to the Blue Jackets, and he ends up winning multiple Vezina trophies with the Blue Jackets. That one was something that, to me, we talked about earlier, the Eagles having where they stick with guys too much. The Flyers almost had the reverse of that, where it's like, oh, you can't do it for me right here, right now. Peace out, homie. And then we end up watching these guys, Jeff Carter, Mike Richards, Simone Gagne, go win cups or get big accolades with other teams. And that, for me, is why I walked away from the Flyers for like 2 or 3 years, because I had to watch all my favorite players go win with other teams. And that just hurts so much, especially when you have a team that hasn't won for so long in my lifetime. And that's what I said to all my friends. I've said, like, if you ever have to worry about me getting a sports tattoo, it's if the Flyers win the cup, because that's going to be, I will walk out the next day and I will find a place that I'll get a tattoo of the cup and the Flyers logo on my leg. I already got a spot picked out, but they got to actually do it and make it happen. And, when the Eagles won, pretty close to tears, pretty emotional on that one. If the Flyers win it, man, because it's not just one game. That's the best of 7 over and over and over again. You have to grind. I was saving newspaper clippings when the Flyers were in the Stanley Cup Finals leading up to that whole playoffs race. I have laminated newspaper clippings through that whole thing, man. So it's like, I wanted that to happen so bad. I wanted Michael Leighton to take us to the promised land. I thought it was going to happen, and man, that hurt so bad watching the Blackhawks win in our building.
It sure did. Michael who? Mike
Leighton.
Michael who?
Yeah.
I mean, that's
yeah.
I mean, I'm being facetious, but that's the type of goalie that we've had.
Remember Boucher?
Yeah.
Everybody loved Brian Boucher.
Yeah.
He's still a fan favorite here in Philly. Everybody talks about Boucher. But yeah, it was the guy. It's like the dude who's an insurance salesman that rolls in for that day to be your emergency goaltender, and he happens to put it all together. Like, that's kind of what we were used to working with the Flyers. Like, you have that fly-by-night goalie that you just hope can piece it together. That's why Bob hurt so much, because you have this situation where you have so much young talent and a possibility of such a great player, which we have not had since Pelly Lindbergh. And then now we're dealing with, we're going to ship him out so that he can go win and get accolades with other teams. So I hope, beyond hope, that this Carter Hart situation can work out. That dude was in the minors for so long, and it's so nice to see him come up and finally really live up to all those expectations.
Yeah, I mean, the kid's 21. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, he's got a long way to go to gain that level of confidence and experience in the NHL. And you know, I went to the game against the Carolina Hurricanes last I think it was Thursday night. I had great seats. We were 3 rows from the ice, right behind the net. And he does this thing where he takes the water bottle and he'll just spray it up in the air like just in a straight up line, and he'll pick a water bottle like a water droplet, and he'll watch it hit the ice. And it's like a focus thing for him. So every break in the action, he would just take that bottle, flick it up, and then just pick a droplet and just watch it fall. And then he'd put his mask down and he'd do his little warm up thing, and he'd get back and and focus and be in the game. It was, I guess, his way of staying in the game even when the team was on the other end of the ice for most of it. So
And that's got to be like, you don't, as the goalie, you're not always getting the pep talk. Like sometimes you're completely separated from everybody else.
oh, you're on an island.
I really feel like besides for there's a couple of things that you could argue are like the hardest thing to do in sports, but I think goalie would definitely be up there in your top
That's why
five
they're so
hardest
weird.
positions. You know?
Yeah, that's why they're so weird.
Oh, they're always odd guys.
Yeah.
Almost always very odd guys. But you know, it's like drummers. You know, you have to have that a bit of eclecticness to be able to do that, to handle that pressure or handle the fact that like you're literally carrying the song or the team, if you will.
Right, right. And you know, for my perspective on the Flyers, you know, they're playing well. They've hooked me back in. Like I said, I really wasn't on board this year. I had enough. I told my dad, I'm like, I'm done with them until they prove me out. You know, until they prove me wrong. And you know, this last 9-10 games, they've, you know, put it together. But it hasn't just been these last 9 or 10 games. It's been consistent throughout the whole year. And I kind of just want to mention something to you and get your thoughts on it. I'm going to mention a name to you, and I'm going to draw a comparison to the Flyers. And the name I'm going to mention is Ed Wade. Ed Wade was the former general manager of the Philadelphia Phillies, and also, after he left the Phillies, went to the Houston Astros, where he was the general manager there. And I'm going to also mention a name, and I want you to think of the comparison, is Ron Hextall and how they compare to one another, because I really feel like Ron Hextall is going to be the new Ed Wade.
You know, it's yeah, I think it's an interesting comparison to make because a lot of people felt like when Ruben Amaro took the reins of the Phillies that he was essentially had Pat Gillick's team, and that kind of allowed him to do what he did with that team. But yet it seemed like it wasn't, even from what you're saying, it was pre Pat Gillick even. So now you're having a situation possibly the same with the Flyers, because I think everyone wanted Hextall to be that savior for the Flyers because you saw what he did with the Kings and you watched him do it with former Flyers. And you're like, man, to bring this guy in who is a former Flyer in himself and then come over here, we want him to be successful here. We want him to be able to build that. We would trust the process with him up to a point. And then I feel like essentially since the last couple of years, you had so many dominoes fall with that team. You had Ed Snyder die. Comcast Spectacor kind of basically owned that team for a little while. And I don't really know how much of a detriment that was, because I can't imagine they had very much incentive other than making money to do anything with that team. What trades did we make? Anything did we do during that period of time that were significant? So I really feel like Hextall's hands were tied in a lot of aspects with that. But yet, even with that, we're seeing now the fruits of his labor possibly coming to fruition.
And watching, you know, his draft picks come in and play major roles this season, you know, his hands are all over this team. I mean, really, with the exception of Kevin Hayes, who has been phenomenal pickup. I mean, let's not discredit that. Fletcher did a great job getting him here via trade and then convincing him to stay here. So that in and of itself has been probably one of the biggest moves over the offseason. But, you know, Hexy's hands are all over this. I mean, he held on to Hextall too long. I think that was his biggest detriment. And he wouldn't bring up the young guys.
I think the team clearly lost Hextall a while ago.
Oh, bar none.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was a fun experiment, and I thought it was a possibility. I mean, he had a very good record in college, if I remember correctly.
He did.
So, I mean, it's always, you got to give those guys a shot. But in like the chip situation, how much of that do you allow for them to handle those reins? Do you kind of dull it out piece by piece, or do you allow them just to kind of go full bore? But yet you run the situation then with chip, like I'm going to essentially eviscerate your entire team and then have fun picking up those pieces when I leave.
Right, and getting back to Hextall and Ed Wade, I mean, the comparison I wanted to make was Ed Wade leaves the Phillies, Pat Gillick comes in with, for the most part, Ed Wade's players, pulls in a piece here or there, a piece here or there, and they win a world championship. And not only that, but then Ed Wade leaves here, goes to the Astros. Now, this is before we knew about the cheating and everything.
Of course.
But still pulled the pieces and made those draft picks to get them to that point.
And you could argue even without the cheating that they would have been a good team. I mean, look at the
correct.
pieces that they have, and look at that starting lineup is ridiculous. I mean, when you have those three guys coming out to pitch for you, from jump, as soon as they got Greinke, I was like, it's a wrap.
Right. So, Ed Wade.
That was last year. I misspoke. Sorry. But even in 17, you could see that they had pieces where they could have won that title without having to cheat.
Exactly. And from my perspective and my opinion, like I just keep drawing these comparisons from Ed Wade to Hextall because I can see where the Flyers could possibly win it this year. I mean, I forget what sports book I was looking at, but the Flyers have the greatest % chance to win the Cup this year. Right now, they're sitting at like 12.4%. The Vegas Golden Knights are slightly behind them at just upper 11s in percentage, and then teams like the Capitals and the Lightning and the upper echelon teams are there. But I'm really excited about them. I'm excited to see Kevin Hayes really prove me wrong, because when they signed him, I'm like, how long did they sign him for? What did they sign him for? Why did they bring him here? What's so good about Kevin Hayes? And he's just gone out there every night and proven to be, he doesn't have the captain on his chest, and he doesn't have an A on his chest either. As an assistant captain, but he has gone out there every night and played lights out hockey. I mean, this guy has been probably our MVP throughout the entire year, from the forward and winger perspective. So the other thing I wanted to bring up was, as far as the Flyers' success this year, I think a lot of it's derived from their coaches, and it starts at the head coach position. You've got Alain Vigneault, who has a long history in the league, coached the Montreal Canadiens, coached the Vancouver Canucks to a Stanley Cup final where they lost to the Boston Bruins. Went to the New York Rangers where he coached them to the Stanley Cup final. And I believe that was in his first year with the Rangers where he went to the final, eventually losing to the Kings. This is the first year that Alain Vigneault is with the Flyers, and you're seeing kind of the same mix of getting the Flyers ready to play, and who knows where it's going to lead. Could it lead to a Cup final? We don't know. We'll find out. But the other two assistant coaches, other than Ian LaPerriere, are non-Flyer related coaches, one being Mike Yeo. Mike Yeo was a former coach of Minnesota. He was also the coach of the St. Louis Blues last year. At the beginning of the year, got fired in the season. Craig Berube obviously took that team over and went and won a Stanley Cup. And the other coach that I wanted to point out and bring to everybody's attention is Michel Therrien, former coach of the Montreal Canadiens, coached the Pittsburgh Penguins, and then went back to and coached the Canadiens again. So you have very high-level power, if you will, in the coaching positions there, and experience, and you basically have three head coaches. You got three head coaches that can, divvy up the work, and Alain Vigneault can delegate and work on certain things that he wants to work on, while these other three with LaPerriere are they have his back and can continue to develop their players. So I really feel like having those three coaches and LaPerriere on top of it are really what's been driving this team this year.
It's really great to be able to see them do big things. It's been so long, and I, like you, being a diehard Flyers fan, a guy that wears their stuff. I'm like a walking billboard for the Philadelphia Flyers the vast majority of the days of my life. It's nice to be able to see them finally be relevant again. And I know, just like you, I had really run into that spot where it was like, I'm done. I stopped buying NHL Center Ice. I stopped spending hours of my life watching that team every year. For 3 years, I basically was like, all right, I'm done with this team. And so it's really nice to be able to come back and say, hey, this is what we're going to do. And I mean, it's not to be bandwagon-esque with that. It's not like I went and rooted for someone else. I literally just stopped watching hockey for a couple of years because it was like, it's painful to me to watch my team do nothing every single year. And I can watch baseball that is not relevant, if you will, like with the Phillies. They for years they had where they just were not contending in any way, shape, or form. But I love baseball, and it's a lot of fun to watch. I also love hockey, but it just got to the point where you watch your favorite sport become tedious. It's like I have to walk away from this so I don't end up hating it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's how I was at the beginning of this year. I just got tired of feeling like I was being strung along. How many times can you, keep pulling the wool over my eyes, so to say, and keep me coming back for more? And, I mean, you can say the same thing about season ticket holders. How long are people going to be paying thousands of dollars a year to keep going to these games and paying for parking?
Not like they drop the prices when they don't play well.
No, they're expensive, man. I mean, I don't know how people afford to go to these games anymore without them being like a corporate sponsored thing. Like the tickets that I get are through work, and it's literally like a perk of the job, which is, hey, here, can you go to a game, go enjoy, go have fun on the company, and it's great and it's appreciated, and I love that that little perk and that little benefit. But for the average Joe to go to a game anymore, you almost can't afford it.
I mean, for two people to go, you're easily dropping $100
easily, and that's for upper deck, upper level seats.
Yeah,
and that paying for the bridge. There's $5 to get over the bridge if you come from Jersey.
Parking's $20.
Parking's $20. A beer,
unless you park on the other side of the stadium. You walk around. There's a hole that they cut in the fence, and you can walk through the hole in the fence, go under the overpass, and then come up the side, and you are like basically at the back of the Wells Fargo Center. They used to only charge $5, so it was kind of worth it to like take your life in your hands to park. But now it's like 10 or 15. So I'm going to pay 20 and I'll be comfortable, and I'll know I have lights and porta potties and I might not die.
But that's the thing, with this team and with the Flyers. I mean, they got me back, and we can go back to last year as a little aside with the Phillies, and Bryce Harper and the team and everything, and people were wondering why people weren't going to games. They weren't winning. Now the Flyers this year are winning, and they're not full like they used to be, and I think it has a lot to do with what I'm saying is, prove it to me. Once you start to put a consistent thing on the ice or on the field or on the court, wherever your game may be, that's when people will come back, and they'll come back in droves. We've seen it with the Phillies. We've seen it with the Eagles. We've seen it with the Sixers. It's going to happen with the Flyers because they're the hottest team in town right now.
Yep.
And I can't tell you how excited I am to watch them and be, as excited as I am about them. It's a good feeling. It's a good time to be a Flyers fan. It's a good time to see all this young talent finally come up and see what we've been waiting so long to see. And Carter Hart, I mean, gosh, a goalie for the Philadelphia Flyers is almost as bad as a quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. I mean, somebody should literally make a jersey like that Browns jersey, the one with like Detmer at the top, and it just keeps going down and down and down with all the different quarterbacks. Somebody should do that from, Ron Hextall to current, and see how many goaltenders have actually come through. Brizgalov, Czechmanik, Van Beesbrook.
Totally forgot about Ilya Brizgalov.
Brizgalov, yeah. We're still paying him.
Are we really?
Yeah. Yeah, we're still paying him. I think it's like $9 million a year for the next, I don't know, probably 7 or 8 more years.
Oh, God. And that's the life I had to deal with there. But it's happy to be back, and I think if they show up and they really just show that as much effort as they possibly can, the Philadelphia fans will show them their love again, and people will come back, just like you said. And I think Philly's great for being one of those towns like that, where you can kick us while we're down several times over, but when things are good, we'll come back and we'll make sure that we get everything. We're there to support in big droves and with a lot of passion, for sure.
Yeah, and like I said, it's really good to see them playing the way they are, and we're coming down to the wire as far as regular season. I think they're currently tied for first place as we're recording this now. So Got a big game coming up soon against Boston. And I think that's tomorrow night, actually. They play Boston. So, they're going to be the litmus test, Boston's and the Tampa Bays of the world. Pittsburgh obviously is up there. So we need to, continue to play better and play well against everybody, but especially those teams that are in the upper echelon of the league and start to really make a name for ourselves. And as we said before, get into the playoffs, get hot, and you never know what can happen. So.
Yep. And I would love to see us not squander Claude Giroux's career. I want to see that guy in the playoffs as much as possible.
It's hard to imagine that we're actually saying that because to me, Claude Giroux is still that 18-year-old kid. It doesn't seem that long ago that he was the 18-year-old kid, and now he's one of the elder statesmen of the team and of the league. And you're right. You don't want to see him his career go to waste. And not be able to hoist that cup. I want to see nothing more than that.
Yep. After Mike Richards, Jeff Carter, and Simone Gagne, one of two things, either see him walk off into the sunset with nothing or see him walk off in the sunset with a cup from another team, that would hurt. So I want to see him do well here. So, all right, I think that'll wrap up this episode of the Muffed Punt podcast. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. I want to thank Ralph for showing up as always. And just make sure you guys stay tuned. Escape the Mind Productions on YouTube, on SoundCloud, on Twitter, and on Spotify as well. We are all around, so definitely check us out. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe. And I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your evening.
My turn. It is. You told me it was my turn.
You can talk all that you want to, yell and scream. You lost.
It is my turn.
You lost the game. Take as long as you want. You're still lost.